The film begins and we see two brothers, Danny and Brian, driving down a highway. They are joined by two women, Kate and Bobby. They soon come across a parked car blocking the path. Brian slows down and they see a man wave at them and yell hello. They quickly roll up their windows and the man says he and his daughter have run out of gas. Brian tells him to stay where he is, but he keeps approaching. Eventually, they see his daughter wearing a bloody mask and they realize they are infected. Brian quickly tries to speed away, but the man smashes his window with a wrench. He eventually maneuvers around the vehicle and the man fades away behind them. Bobby sadly states they're gonna die out there, but Brian responds saying everybody dies. As they continue on, we see gas now leaking from the back of their car. We then see the title screen and Brian narrates saying a deadly virus has appeared. Most of the population has died and the remaining are left to fend for themselves. He says the infected pass the virus through their breathing and they must sanitize anything that they have touched. Brian says the sick are already dead and there's no point in trying to save them. Back on the road, the group's car breaks down from the gas leak. Danny wants to go back and steal the father's car, but Kate says it's too risky. They argue for a bit, then decide it's their only option. They walk towards the man with face coverings and Brian pulls out his gun. The man is named Frank and he tells them a school nearby apparently has a new serum for the virus. Brian wants to shoot him, but Danny convinces him to travel there together because they won't kill his daughter named Jody. They all sanitize the car and they put up a plastic barrier, then take off. At night, Danny tells them about their vacation home in Texas where they are currently traveling to. The group plans to stay there until all the infected die or there is a cure. The four of them sit around a fire, then suddenly hear gunshots. They see two cars engaged in a chase and they quickly put out the flames. They see one man get out and run away, but he is quickly gunned down by his attackers. Luckily, the group is not spotted and they hit the road in the morning. In the town, they pass trucks full of human remains and abandoned homes. They reach the school and go inside, while Bobby and Jody remain in the car. Inside, they find a doctor in a sealed area. He tells Frank to bring in his sick daughter, but they see half his face is red. It's then revealed that he is euthanizing sick children and he does not have any serum. Frank gets angry and threatens the doctor, but the doctor convinces him this is the best and least painful way for the kids. Back in the car, Jody begins to choke and needs her oxygen tank. Despite warnings, Bobby goes to help her, but she spits up some blood which lands on her face. She quickly wipes it off, then puts up the barrier before the group returns. Frank then takes Jody to use the bathroom, and the group abandons them despite protests from Danny. They stop on the road to clean the car, and Bobby hides her bloody shirt to not reveal what happened. Later, they arrive at a high-end golf resort to spend the night. It seems empty, so they decide to have some fun and sleep in the rooms. Inside, Brian tries to kiss Bobby, who is his girlfriend, but she pulls away now that she may be infected. She still doesn't tell him what happened though. Brian then finds a pool, and he almost falls in after being spooked by a dead, infected body. Luckily, Danny saves him before he hits the water. They then play around on the course, and Danny crashes a cart into a sand trap. Bobby then arrives, and he playfully grabs her, and she screams at him, then leaves. She knows that if she's infected, she may have just passed it on to Brian. When night falls, Danny and Kate walk through the resort, then see some flashlights. They think it's Brian, but he doesn't answer, and they quickly sprint away. They are then chased, and they hear many voices which sound like a group of people. The two hide in a kitchen, and armed men in gas masks slowly walk inside. They try to sneak out, but they are discovered. Still outside, Brian sees the flashlights and returns to the building. He hides and sees more men with shotguns patrolling the area. One spots him, but he manages to take him down and rip off the mask. Before they can talk, the other men come out with the rest of the captured group and subdue him. The survivalists then reveal that the body in the pool was their friend, and they think Brian killed him. They plan to keep Bobby and Kate, and this angers Brian and Danny. However, they inspect their bodies and discover Bobby is infected, so they force them to leave the resort immediately. They drive off and wear masks, and nobody talks to Bobby out of spite for her lying. Brian eventually stops the car and sadly tells Bobby to get out. She begins to cry and begs to stay, so Brian forces her out himself. He leaves her a little bit of supplies and food, and he screams at her for what she did. She sobs more, but he tells her he has no choice and drives off. The group continues on the road but are low on gas. They see an approaching car and Brian forces it to stop. Inside are two old women and Danny politely tells them they need some spare gas. The two decline, so Danny lies saying he has a wife who is pregnant, but they still refuse and start the car. Before they can leave, Brian jumps out and fires many rounds at them. One of them dies and they crash into a ditch. The other jumps out and is also killed, but not before hitting Brian in the leg with her own pistol. The brothers then get into a fight and Brian says somebody had to kill them. He screams at Danny and says he is always doing the hard things, such as dragging Bobby out of the car. They calm down and siphon out the gas from the ladies, then continue on. They stop at an old house and Danny climbs in to look for medical supplies. He finds a deceased old lady with a shotgun on her lap. He walks to another room where a stray dog attacks him on the ground. They struggle, but he eventually manages to kill it using the previously mentioned shotgun. He then finds some medicine in the room. When he goes to clean off Brian, he discovers that he too has been infected from his time with Bobby. The two go quiet, and Danny begins to tear up. He then tells Kate about the news, and they leave with Brian in the back seat. On the radio, they hear SOS messages from the last few survivors. When they park for the night, Brian demands to hold on to the keys so they don't leave him. The three sit around a fire, and Brian eventually falls asleep. Danny tries to take the keys, but he wakes up. Brian is too weak though, so Danny takes the gun and keys and begins to cry. Brian sees they are leaving, so he gets up and stumbles towards the car, then reveals that Danny took the wrong set of keys. Danny gets out of the car, but Brian says he needs to either shoot him or take him with him. He says he refuses to end up like the others, where he rots and then dies alone. Danny doesn't want to shoot, but his brother leaves him no choice, so he quickly ends him. Him and Kate sadly keep driving in the morning until they finally reach their old vacation spot in Texas. However, Danny says he feels like he is all alone without Brian. He sits on the beach and imagines all of his old memories with him when they were kids. We see one of those memories, and the two young brothers wave at the camera. Then sad music begins, and the movie comes to a close.